Hey podcaster, do you often find yourself running out of time or maybe skipping a week because you just don't have enough time to do all of the steps into podcasting? Well, I have a solution for you. If you follow me on social media, I've been talking about micro episodes for a while now, but I really have to say, if you haven't tried them already, you must, absolutely must. They're my favorite, and in fact, that is one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because I truly believe that is super possible to create podcast content that is super actionable, worthwhile, and that just is consumed all the way through by your listeners. I'm going to explain everything, break down exactly how you can do it and its benefits. I'm Anna Xavier, and this is the podcast space. All right, for all of my skepticals out there, people who say, Anna, I listen to podcast episodes. They're like 3 hours long, and I love it. Okay, I'm not saying that you absolutely can't have a podcast that is 3 hours long, but if you're like me, an entrepreneur, small business owner who's doing all the things or has a small team, or that really is trying to just work in a smarter way, I have to say, just creating micro episodes is going to really lift the workload that you have with every episode that you're crafting. Because remember, it's not just about the research. It's about also the time that it takes to edit, publish, market, write show notes for it, all of these things. And so the shorter the episode, the less times it takes to edit and so on and so forth. So I truly believe that you should give it a go. Now, a couple of years ago, I did a post on LinkedIn and I asked, hey, what do you think about micro episodes? And a larger percentage of people, larger than I expected at least, said that micro episodes didn't offer enough value. And for that, I have a rebuttal. And here's why. I think that when you're creating micro episodes, you have this assumption that everything must be really complex. And in fact, it doesn't need to be like that, because I want you to remember the one quote that changed your life, right? We all can read a quote that really will incentivize us to work harder, or just it lifts an awareness that we didn't have enough, or just motivates us to go the next step. So if a quote can motivate you, if a quote can change your life, why wouldn't a podcast episode, right? So what is a micro episode? I've been asked this a lot of times, like how short can it be? How long can it be? And honestly, I've heard episodes that were 3 minutes long. In fact, I used to drive to work before I launched the podcast space, and I would listen to these one daily show that was 3 minutes long. It was kind of on the inspirational side, but I remember this one show that I'll never forget, because it was about like how you tackle the day and how you choose to see the day as like a kind of quote unquote things are happening to me victim mentality, or like tackle it as a superhero and think, how can I overcome this? How can this be a lesson for me, right? And I remember thinking, oh, okay, interesting. And when I got to the podcast studios that I used to work at, that day was just bonkers. Like everything went wrong. And I remember like just thinking about that episode, I can choose to be a superhero and tackle this topic or this situation as like, how can I learn from this? How can I show myself that I can overcome anything? So a 3-minute episode is absolutely doable, right? Especially if you're breaking it down into like a bite-sized information that is just like one thing. Like this episode is just about a quick guide to creating micro episodes. Now, it can be anything from 50 seconds to 15 minutes. Now, I don't think that over 15 minutes can be considered a micro episode, but if you're looking at people who create content like once a month that is like 3 hours long, yeah, I guess it can be considered a micro episode. And so I'm wondering, I'm not keeping tabs on like the time, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be able to keep this episode under 10 minutes. Now, how do you structure this? Let's say if you have a 3-minute episode, you probably want an intro that is shorter. So you want to create a dedicated intro, or like a pre-recorded intro. That's what I'm talking about. Or just go straight to it. Maybe you don't have a teaser. Maybe you just have your pre-recorded intro if you really feel like you need it. By the way, this podcast doesn't have it, in case you didn't notice. I don't have a fancy person announcing me. I do it just myself with a quick sound effect. And so I think that it's possible to really play around with a lot of what it could be, and not allowing yourself to go into the mindset of In order for me to be valuable, I need to create a lot of content. Think about it. It's actually really hard to be very succinct. If someone says, hey, what do you do in a sentence? A lot of people cannot really be able to do that because they're like, oh, wait, there's like this and this and this. It's the same thing. And so I think that in a very busy world, think about it like this. From your perspective, it's easier to create micro content. And from the listener's perspective, it's easier to consume more episodes. And now, from the analytics point of view, when you're looking at the episode, the more the episode is consumed, so let's say if someone listened to the whole episode, it will be shown as like 100% consumption rate. But if someone listens to that episode more than once, like 2 times, 3 times, it will be over 100%. And that's exactly what you want. You want people to listen to the same episode time and time again. The listener's attention is fragmented, so they're probably going to be multitasking when they're listening to you. And you want to make sure that you deliver value that is actionable. But if you can tell your listeners something that can be, I don't know, said in 5 minutes, why would you create an episode that is 20 just because of these limiting belief that an episode that delivers value has to be at least 20 minutes, right? So I want to question exactly what you perceive as value, and I want you to start creating content that feels more doable on your side, that doesn't feel stressful. But also, let's say you're onboarding clients, or let's say you receive a social media message from like a very specific topic. If you create micro content that is very specific and narrow about the problem that you're solving, it's just easier overall to say, hey, thanks for reaching out. I actually have a podcast episode on that. And you can turn that person into a listener instead of having to type out this massive answer, right? So I hope this episode helped you. I really love micro episodes. I think they're really the future and you need to incorporate. In fact, every big creator and podcaster has micro content. Maybe it's additional to the content they're creating already, or maybe they have it every other week. So start paying attention to your favorite creators and notice, do they have micro episodes? Just something to think about. And before I sign off, I want to remind you that if you want to learn about better ways to podcast, I've created a whole course dedicated to this. It's called Maximize Your Podcast Content. And it covers as well the types of episodes that you can create to work smarter, not harder, and just to continue creating content that is going to drive your business goals, is going to create kind of meaningful connections with other decision makers, and really connect deeper to your listeners. So if you want, you can go on the description below or at thepodcastspace.com/course. It's Maximize Your Podcast Content. And I would love for you to check it out. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at the podcast space, THE podcast as a singular and space. I hope you try this and let me know on Instagram. I hope you have a wonderful day and keep creating incredible, imperfect content that drives you forward. Bye.